All right, good evening, everyone. It is, as always, wonderful to end the week learning together. Parsha Shavua, Parsha Pump Up. I want to thank our sponsors this week, Sheila, Hermel, and the Hermel family, who sponsored in honor of Jerry's birthday. We wish Jerry a very happy birthday, and it is a great testament to who Jerry is and who the Hermel family is, that they celebrate a birthday through sponsoring Torah and supporting Torah learning. Sponsorships are available if anyone would like to sponsor one of the classes or all the classes. Please let me know. I'd be happy to help you out. You can contact the office directly. This week we have Parshas Chayei, where we learn of the death of Sarimenu. We learn of how Sarimenu died at the age of 127. And we learn about how Avram went to go find a place to bury her. He picked the plot of Maras Machpelah, which he bought from Ephron, and he buries her in Hebron, which is Kiryas Arba. Okay, and we go through that whole episode of Avram burying his beloved wife Sarah, giving her the hesped of Eshes Chayil. Then the Torah shifts gears into the next episode, and that really begins in chapter 24 in Perek Chaf Daled. There, the pasuk says, "Va'Avram zaken ba b'yamim," that Avram was getting older. V'Hashem barich es Avraham bakol, and God blessed Avram bakol. Rashi tells us that bakol, with everything, has the same numerical value as the word ben, which means son. Avram was blessed with a son. And what's a son, says Rashi, if the son is not going to go on and get married? And that's where the Torah now shifts gears towards the narrative of the shidduch that is created between Yitzchak and Rivka, where Avram appoints his Eved, his servant Eliezer, to go and find a wife for Yitzchak, and gives him a whole detailed outline of exactly what type of wife would be suitable for his son. And that's exactly what Eliezer does. He goes to find a wife for Yitzchak. And the Torah tells us in great detail every single step of the journey, from the time that Eliezer arrived to his destination, and that he fed his camels water, and that Rivka helped with the water, and then he went to go meet Rivka's family, and then all the details of that whole conversation of the families meeting together, and then Rivka coming back with Eliezer and encountering Yitzchak in great detail. The Torah goes through everything. In fact, it takes up an entire chapter of the Torah, all of chapter 24. It just goes and goes and goes in extreme detail, all just about the shidduch of, I just keep going, all about the shidduch that took place between Rivka and Yitzchak. So Rabbi Soloveitchik wonders, he actually points out a few questions on this week's Parsha. He says, why is so much precious real estate of the Torah dedicated toward this shidduch between Yitzchak and Rivka? We see other relationships happen in the Torah, and it's not this of great detail to figure out exactly how they met. What's your story of how you met? And we don't have to hear it from anyone to find out what the story of Yitzchak and Rivka was. We just have to read the Torah. It tells us all the details of it. Why does the Torah take such great detail to tell us the shidduch of Yitzchak and Rivka? I mean, we're talking about more than 60 psukim, 67 psukim, I think. It's 67 psukim. That's a lot of space in the Torah. So that's question number one. Question number two, it's more than half of the Parsha. Question number two is, if you take a look at the end of the Parsha, the very, very end of the Parsha, when I mean the very end, I mean from Pasuk Yud Bet, so verse 12 in chapter 25, verse 12, where it says, Ve'ele Toldot Yishmael, these are the generations, the offspring of Yishmael, the other son of Avram. So from verse 12 to the end of the Torah, which is, or just before the end of the Torah, through verse 18. Okay, so we're talking about 6 verses in the Torah. The Torah literally has a list of the generations of Yishmael, the offspring of Yishmael. Eile told the Yishmael ben Avram. These are the offsprings of Yishmael ben Avram. Asher Yalda Hagar, the son of Hagar. Hamitzur Shivchas Sarah, the maidservant of Sarah, Avram, ve'ela Shmos b'nei Yishmael. These are the names, b'shmosam l'toldosam, and literally just goes through their names. Nivos, ve'kedar, it just goes through the names, and then it just ends off and says, Elohim b'nei Yishmael, ve'ela Shmosam b'chatzrehem. Just, that's it. End of story. Why does the Torah feel the need to list the children of Yishmael, the offspring of Yishmael, the generations of Yishmael? Why does it matter to me? Why do I need to know it? We know that the Torah itself says that Yitzchak is going to be the progenitor of the tradition, is going to be the one that takes after Avram Avinu. In fact, halachically speaking, Yitzchak is the true son of Avram Avinu. Why do I need to know anything about Yishmael's family or his offspring? I know about the story of Yishmael. That was important for me to know. I know about the conflict that took place in the house between Isaac and Ishmael, and the way that Avram had to deal with it, the way that Sarah dealt with it, the way that Hagar dealt with it, that whole episode. But what do I need to know about the offspring of Ishmael? That's question number 2. Question number 3. We look at the Haf Torah. Now, the Haf Torah was established by our rabbis during a time where we were unable to read the Torah portion on a weekly basis. So there was a section of the Nevi'im, of the prophets, that was chosen that is shares the same theme of the Parsha of the week. The same theme of the Parsha of the week is connected directly to a portion in the prophets. And the portion of the prophets that's most directly connected to the weekly Parsha, that's what we read at the end of davening. That's where the whole institution of Haf Torah came from. So the Haf Torah for this week's Parsha is actually the first chapter in the book of Melachim Aleph, Kings 1. Kings 1, chapter 1 is the Haf Torah of this week's Parsha. What is Kings 1, chapter 1 all about? It's about the death of David HaMelech. Okay, there you have a connection between a great Jewish leader, Sarah Imenu, who passes away, and David HaMelech, a great Jewish leader and a great king, Jewish leader who passes away. Okay, there's a connection. But there were a lot of Jewish leaders that passed away throughout the prophets. So why is this one chosen? Why is this Haf Torah chosen to be the Haf Torah for Parshas Chayei Sarah? Okay. Rabbi Soloveitchik suggested that the way to understand Parshas Chayei Sarah, that if one were to try and sum up all of Parshas Chayei Sarah in essentially one idea, one theme, one principle, it is that of Mesorah, tradition, and the giving over of the tradition. The Shalsheles HaMesorah, the chain of our Mesorah, our continuity. That what the key to the Jewish people, what has been the secret to our greatness, is the fact that we don't just look towards the future, but we look towards the future while being informed by the past. That is the secret to Judaism. Always. In fact, we know that one of the basic principles of Judaism is that the Torah we have is a never-changing Torah. We'll never change it. We apply it to whatever scenario we are being faced with. But we know that our tradition is so pure that it could be adapted to any scenario. It can be affixed to any time period. Why is it that the Torah spends so much time detailing and highlighting every single piece of the shidduch, the marriage that happened between Yitzchak and Rivka? because it wasn't just any marriage. This was the very first marriage. This was the very first step in the Shalshelas HaMesorah, in the chain. What was Avram and Sarah's relationship? Their marriage. That wasn't a chain yet. That was one ring. Yitzchak and Rivka, that was attaching the next ring. It turned it into a chain. The Torah wanted to emphasize in such great detail everything that needs to go into making sure that that chain will be connected and won't break. All of the fact that Avram Avinu spent so much time talking about the type of girl that needs to be found, that it needs to be from a specific type of a family. It needs to be a person that has proper midos, has proper character traits, someone who's caring, someone who's kind, someone who is going to carry over the same tradition, the same way of going about her is the same way that Sarimenu did. That it needs to be, you need to be a progenitor of the Mesorah. You need to be someone that carries out the Mesorah, carries out their tradition. The Torah needs to detail every single piece of the shidduch to teach us, to give us a model that in order to have the Torah continue on to the next generation, it needs to be done in the most careful way. And Rabbi Soloveitchik pointed to the very first Mishnah in Pirkei Avos that we find in the very first Mishnah of Pirkei Avos. The Mishnah, the Rav said, the Mishnah of Mesorah, of transmission, of tradition, transmitting that tradition. This very first Mishnah in Pirkei Avos really details everything that needs to go into, summarizes everything that needs to go into giving over a Mesorah. The Mishnah says, Moshe kibel Torah Sinai. Moshe received the Torah from Har Sinai. So right away, the Rav says, you look at these first four words in Pirkei Avos, and you should be taken aback, because technically speaking, the way that you translate these four words is Moshe, Moses, kibel, received, Torah, the Torah, mi Sinai, from Sinai. I'm sorry, Moshe Rabbeinu received the Torah from God, not from Sinai. Moshe Rabbeinu received the Torah at Sinai, not from Sinai. So it should say bis Sinai, or me HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from God, or at be Sinai, not mis Sinai, from Sinai. Said Rabbi Soloveitchik that what was Sinai? What was Har Sinai? What was unique about Har Sinai? Why was it chosen as the mountain that the Torah was to be given on? So our rabbis teach us because Sinai was the most humble of the mountains in the region. It was the most humble of all mountains. What exactly that means, I've never met a pompous mountain, but I've never met a haughty mountain. But God chose Sinai to be the mountain because God felt that Sinai was the most humble of all mountains. Says Rabbi Soloveitchik, Moshe kibel Torah mis Sinai, from Sinai, from humility. That is the only way that you could receive the Torah and then give over the Torah. It's impossible to have a Shalshelas HaMesorah, to have the continuity in our tradition without having humility. Continued Rabbi Soloveitchik. And then we look at the Shalshelas HaMesorah. Masar Yeshua, he gave it over to Yeshua, and the Yeshua Zakanim to the elders. And then they gave it over to the Zakanim, to the Nevi'im, to the prophets. And then the prophets, Masar La'anshe Knesset HaGedolah, gave it to the giants of those of the great assembly. Heim Amru Shlosha Dvarim. What are the three things that the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah want to teach? Again, the very first Mishnah, the Mishnah of our Mesorah. What are the three things that are being taught? Havu Mesunim Badim, that we have to be calculated in our judgment. You know, the Shulchan Aruch in the Beis Yosef, written by Rabbi Yosef Karo. Yosef Karo lived from 1488 to 1575, was the most revolutionary halachic authority to live in the definitely last 500, well, he lived more than 500 years ago, but perhaps since the Rambam, or maybe even since Rebbe HaKadosh and Ravina and Rashi. Says Rabbi Yosef Karo, Mesunim Badin means that a dayan when he's making a psak halacha, when he has to make a decision, when there is a two litigants standing in front of him, and each have claims about who owns this item, or who stole from whom, or who owes who money, they have to hear both sides, and they have to be and they have to be so calculated in how they're going to give over their psak. Why do they have to be so? The Mishnah is emphasizing that you have to be so incredibly deliberate in your judgment. Why? Says Rabbi Soloveitchik, because you're not just giving over a psak where, oh, okay, I made a mistake. All right, it's not the end. I'll get the next one right. Not the end of the world. I'll get the next one right. What are you, out of your mind? If you make a mistake here, you can ruin the whole chain. You can break the whole chain. We have a chain that goes back all the way to Har Sinai. It's up to you to make sure that it continues, Dayan. And therefore, you have to be masunan badin. You have to be so calculated with every single psak halacha that you give. V'haminu talmidam harbe. You have to appoint many students. Said Rabbi Soloveitchik that there's a concern that the rabbis had here, that a person could become stingy over the Mesorah. A person becomes stingy over the Torah that they know. That they have Torah that they have learned and they've studied, and they're so stingy about it because it is something precious. But now the Mishnah is telling you, but you know what? You also have to extend yourself a little bit. You have to extend yourself to make sure that you're going to make sure that the Torah spreads to as many people as possible. You have to have a lot of students because you need to make sure that it spreads out. That you can't just sit in your ivory tower learning Torah. That it needs to be something that you share with other people. It needs to be something that you learn bechavrusa, you learn bechabura with a group, and you extend it outward. Ve'aminu talmidam harbe, va'asu siyag l'Torah. V'asu siyag l'Torah. You make a fence around the Torah. We need to make sure that our Mesorah does not get tainted and does not get ruined. V'asu siyag l'Torah. Last night we pointed out from Rabbi Dov Katz, who wrote a whole book on the controversy of the Musar movement. But he writes in the beginning of his book, Pulmos HaMusar, he says, if you recall, we studied it last night. He says that, the fences we put around our Mesorah are necessary to be there because when new ideas start to be, when we espouse new ideas, so there's a risk there of potentially tampering with the transmission of our tradition. And therefore, if a new idea doesn't get pushback, then it's not something that is going to fit into our Mesorah. The fact that it had pushback and then it stuck means that it was something legitimate. V'asu siyag l'Torah. Make a fence around the Torah. Protect it. On the one hand, you have to be extremely deliberate. You have to be extremely calculated when you are dealing with a new issue. You also need to be very careful to make sure that you're not going to let too many outside influences come in. And you also need to extend it outward. But all of it needs to be done with humility. It needs to be done mis Sinai, the same way that Har Sinai was, a humble mountain. We have to be a mountain. We have to be great. We have to know a lot of Torah. But we also need to be able to be humble about it and be able to extend it and share it in a humble fashion. With this in mind, we can understand why, when it came to Yishmael's offspring, the Torah is very curt about it, very short in its language. We're talking about 4 or 5, 6 psukim. It's very, very short. And all it is Elah told us Yishmael. These are the generations of Yishmael, the son of Avram, who was the son of Hagar. These are the names. Elah Shmos b'nei Yishmael. Who are the names? And it just lists it to contrast it to the way we talk about the offspring of Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the way we talk about those shidduchim that happened, that it's in such great detail because there it matters to us. It matters to us it matters to us greatly. But when it comes to Yishmael, it doesn't make a difference to us because it's not part of our Mesorah. It's not part of our tradition. Yishmael is separate from our tradition. So therefore, the Torah wants to contrast that by instead of it being 67 psukim about the generations of Yishmael, we got the entire lineage of Yishmael all in 6 compacted psukim, literally less than a tenth of the amount of psukim that are dedicated to one relationship in the Torah, that of Yitzchak, of our Mesorah, of Yitzchak and Yitzchak and Rivka. And said Rabbi Soloveitchik, now we can understand why the Haf Torah of David HaMelech passing away is chosen as the Haf Torah for Parshas Chayei. Because what is the first chapter of Malachim Aleph all about? Not just David HaMelech dying, but it's David HaMelech dying and then his son Shlomo taking over as king. Later on, I think Pasuk Yud Tes, I believe, it says that that he appointed Shlomo to take over as king. He calls over Bathsheba and he tells Bathsheba that here in Pasuk Yud Gimel, Uchi uboy el hamelech David, that Bathsheba comes to David v'amarta elav halo ata Adoni hamelech nishbata la'amascha le'mor ki Shlomo bin v'necha v'nech yimloch acharai, that Shlomo your son is going to take over the kingship after me. That the first chapter switches its theme, and it switches what it's talking about halfway through, switching the narrative from David HaMelech passing away to Shlomo HaMelech taking over. So hold on. If Kings 1 is all about the kingship of Shlomo HaMelech, and Shmuel Bet, the previous book, was all about the kingship of David HaMelech, so why then doesn't Shmuel Bet, Samuel 2, why doesn't that end with the death of David HaMelech? And then the very first line in chapter 1 of Kings 1 should have been Shlomo taking over as king. But why is there a continuation of David into Malachim Aleph just for 10 psukim, to then for us to learn about how Shlomo's taking over? To teach us a point that we don't ignore. It's not, these aren't two separate things. There wasn't the kingship of David and then the kingship of Shlomo, but the kingship of Shlomo was directly influenced by the transmission of the Mesorah, of the tradition that David HaMelech was giving over to his son. And that's exactly why, says Rabbi Soloveitchik, this Haf Torah, of all Haf Torah, of all sections of prophets, was chosen to be read with Parshas Chayei, because Parshas Chayei is all about Mesorah. It's all about the beauty of our Mesorah. It's all about the importance of our Mesorah, the transmission of that tradition. Just like David HaMelech with Shlomo, just like our rabbis teach us with the way that we have to treat Torah, and just like Avram Avinu was so careful, Avram Zakin Baba Yamim, in his elderly wisdom, Hashem Bareches Avram Bakol, he knew that now is the time to start giving over the details of how to allow the Mesorah, the tradition, to be transmitted from one generation to the next, creating the chain. Wish everyone a beautiful Shabbos. I only have about a minute to stay to answer any questions. If anyone has any questions, happy to stay. But then I have another class starting in a minute ago. But wish everyone a beautiful Shabbos.